The Victorian era, a time of grandeur, innovation, and strict social hierarchy. Spanning from 1837 to 1901 during Queen Victoria's reign, it marked an age of industrial revolution and cultural transformation. But what was daily life like for the people who lived through this fascinating period? Let's step back in time to uncover the rhythms of a typical day in Victorian England. Morning routines in Victorian England depended heavily on your social class. For the wealthy, the day began leisurely. Servants would wake the family with a gentle knock, bringing a basin of warm water for washing and perhaps a cup of tea. Ladies would spend considerable time dressing, with help from maids to lace up corsets, select dresses, and prepare accessories. They would apply face powders and styled their hair in elaborate updos, often spending an hour or more preparing for the day ahead. Meanwhile, gentlemen donned tailored suits and prepare for a day of business or leisure. They would polish their pocket watches and read morning papers delivered to their doorstep. Fashion in the Victorian era was a statement of status, identity, and often discomfort. For the wealthy, clothing was elaborate and carefully curated. Women wore dresses with voluminous skirts supported by crinolines or bustles, tight corsets to achieve the coveted hourglass figure, and intricate lace or embroidery. These corsets, while fashionable, were notoriously restrictive and could cause health issues such as fainting, difficulty breathing, and even organ damage if worn too tightly. Men dressed in tailored suits, waistcoats, and top hats, completing the look with a pocket watch, a symbol of sophistication. However, fashion could also be deadly. The vibrant green dyes used in some fabrics, made with arsenic compounds, were highly toxic and could cause serious health problems for both the wearers and the workers who handled them. For the working class, practicality was key. Their clothing was often made of coarse fabrics like wool or cotton, designed to endure the demands of labor. Dresses were simpler, and men wore sturdy trousers, loose shirts, and flat caps. Regardless of class, fashion was a reflection of the Victorian value placed on modesty and propriety, and tailors, dressmakers, and milliners thrived as they catered to society's unyielding standards. Health and hygiene were critical issues in the Victorian era. While the wealthy had access to bathtubs, indoor plumbing, and clean water, the working class lived in unsanitary conditions. Diseases like cholera and tuberculosis were widespread, especially in urban slums. Public health reforms in the late 19th century began to improve conditions, but disparities remained stark. Breakfast was a lavish affair, featuring eggs, bacon, toast, and tea served in fine china, often in ornate dining rooms. But for the working class, mornings were much harsher. In overcrowded tenements, families often shared a single stove, and the smell of coal fires filled the air. Bread, if available, was a precious commodity. In their cramped, smoky homes, the day began before dawn. Adults prepared for long hours of labor, while children, some as young as 6, got ready for factory shifts or domestic work. Breakfast was simple, often just stale bread or porridge, if there was enough to go around. The air was filled with a sense of urgency as the family prepared to face another grueling day. As the sun rose, the streets came alive. For wealthier men, the commute often involved horse-drawn carriages or walking to offices or clubs. Women of the upper class rarely ventured out unaccompanied, adhering to strict societal norms. Working-class men, women, and children, however, braved crowded streets on foot, heading to factories, docks, or construction sites. Industrial towns were noisy and polluted, with the sound of steam engines and the acrid smell of coal smoke filling the air. The contrast between the serene start to the day for the wealthy and the chaotic rush for workers was stark. The Victorian era was defined by work, and the nature of one's labor highlighted the divisions of class. Factory workers toiled in harsh conditions, operating machinery for up to 16 hours a day. Accidents were common, and the pay was barely enough to survive. Children, often employed for their small size, worked in textile mills, coal mines, and as chimney sweeps, enduring extreme conditions for a fraction of an adult's wage. Imagine a young chimney sweep climbing narrow soot-filled shafts, coughing from the thick smoke, while the sound of factory whistles signaled the start of another grueling day for others. For the upper class, work was a matter of business and prestige. Men managed estates, conducted trade, or held government positions. Their offices were comfortable, lined with mahogany desks and shelves of books. Women of the upper class didn't work in the traditional sense. Their days revolved around managing household staff, organizing social gatherings, and engaging in charity work. However, for many women, societal expectations were stifling. The ideal woman was seen as the guardian of morality and the home, confined to a domestic sphere that left little room for personal ambition. Education for women was limited, with most subjects tailored to prepare them for roles as wives and mothers. Yet by the late Victorian period, winds of change were stirring. Women began to push back against these rigid roles, advocating for equal rights and opportunities. The suffragette movement, led by figures like Emmeline Pankhurst, emerged as a powerful force. These women campaigned tirelessly for the right to vote, organizing marches, public speeches, and even acts of civil disobedience. Though they faced ridicule, imprisonment, and violence, their efforts laid the groundwork for women's suffrage in the 20th century. For many, this fight symbolized the broader struggle to redefine women's place in society, challenging the notion that their lives were limited to domestic duties. Education in the Victorian era reflected the inequalities of the time. Wealthy families employed governesses to educate their children at home, teaching them subjects like literature, arithmetic, and foreign languages. Boys often went on to prestigious schools or universities, while girls' education focused on preparing them for marriage and social obligations. For working-class children, education was limited or non-existent. Many worked instead of attending school. However, the Education Act of 1870 marked the beginning of compulsory education for children aged 5 to 12, aiming to reduce child labor and promote literacy. Schools were often overcrowded, with basic lessons in reading, writing, and arithmetic. The benches were hard and splintered, and supplies like chalk or paper were scarce. Discipline was strict, with misbehavior often punished by the dreaded cane. Lunchtime was another stark reflection of class differences. For factory workers, lunch often consisted of a quick meal eaten on site. Bread, cheese, or cold potatoes were common. There was little time to rest, as long shifts and demanding schedules left little room for leisure. In contrast, wealthier families enjoyed multi-course lunches in elegant dining rooms. Meals were social occasions, featuring roasted meats, vegetables, and desserts, often served by attentive staff. For the elite, lunchtime was an opportunity to discuss business or enjoy family company in a refined setting. The Victorians knew how to enjoy their leisure time, though opportunities varied greatly by class. The wealthy indulged in operas, afternoon teas, and countryside excursions. Their homes were often equipped with music rooms and libraries, reflecting their love for culture and refinement. Seaside resorts like Brighton became popular destinations, offering fresh air and fashionable promenades. For the working class, leisure was simpler. Pubs were a central hub for socializing, and public parks provided a rare escape from industrial life. Street performances, fairs, and music halls brought moments of joy to those with little to spare. As evening fell, gas lamps lit the streets, casting a warm glow over bustling cities. For the wealthy, evenings were filled with entertainment, dinners, dances, and theater performances. Families gathered in richly decorated parlors to read, converse, or play music by the fire. For the working class, evenings often meant preparing for the next day. Meals were humble, and homes were dimly lit by candles or oil lamps. Overcrowded living conditions made rest challenging, but families found solace in small moments of togetherness. The Victorian era was an age of innovation that transformed daily life. Railways revolutionized travel, allowing people to journey further and faster than ever before. A trip that once took days by horse-drawn carriage could now be completed in mere hours, thanks to figures like George Stephenson, known as the father of railways, who helped perfect the steam locomotive. The telegraph, a marvel of communication invented by Samuel Morse and further developed by William Cooke and Charles Wheatstone, enabled messages to be sent across vast distances almost instantaneously, connecting towns, cities, and even countries. Factories became the powerhouses of the Industrial Revolution, with steam engines, pioneered by James Watt, driving production at unprecedented speeds. The advent of electricity added another layer of transformation, with inventors like Thomas Edison, who developed the electric light bulb, and Michael Faraday, whose work on electromagnetic induction laid the foundation for modern electrical engineering. Early experiments with electric lighting began to illuminate urban areas, marking the first steps toward the electrified world we live in today. The Victorian era also gave rise to a literary golden age, producing some of the most celebrated authors whose works continue to influence us today. Charles Dickens, known for novels like Oliver Twist and A Christmas Carol, captured the struggles of the working class with vivid storytelling and social commentary. The Brontë sisters, Charlotte, Emily, and Anne, wrote timeless classics such as Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, exploring themes of love, independence, and morality. Thomas Hardy delved into the complexities of rural life and human emotion in works like Tess of the D'Urbervilles. The era also saw the rise of detective fiction, pioneered by Arthur Conan Doyle, whose iconic character Sherlock Holmes set the standard for the genre. Lewis Carroll enchanted readers with his imaginative tales like Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, while George Eliot, the pen name of Marianne Evans, challenged societal norms with her nuanced portrayals of human relationships in novels like Middlemarch. These authors not only reflected the spirit of their times, but also shaped modern literature, exploring universal themes and creating characters that remain beloved to this day. Their works, often inspired by the rapid changes and tensions of the era, continue to resonate, offering a window into the complexities of Victorian life and its enduring legacy. The Victorian era was a time of extraordinary contrasts. From the opulence of the upper class to the hardships of the working poor, it shaped the modern world in profound ways. Its echoes remain in our architecture, literature, and traditions. What part of the Victorian era fascinates you most?